France is not messing around at all.
Their response to it?
I mean, they're not messing around. They're up there. They've had enough of neoliberalism and austerity. And they're the trendsetters, man. So there they are. They're doing the yellow vesties. And here we'll watch a little bit of this.
Students across France are protesting against the government's education reforms, forcing over 150 schools to close. In a number of cities, the demonstrations also turned violent. Well, France's education minister has condemned what's happening in the country, including some of the police's actions. Jean-Michel Blanquer here was referring to a video that has sparked outrage, showing student protesters on their knees with their hands behind their heads on police orders. He added, though, that the incident does need to be understood in context.
Wow. Oh, yeah, you have to understand that in context.
The riots do come in the wake of weeks of nationwide protests against fuel price increases and high living costs. More of these rallies by the so-called Yellow Vest movement are planned for Saturday. The Yellow Vest riots have seen 3 deaths and hundreds of injuries nationwide so far. In Paris alone, shop profits dropped by 50% and €4 million of damage was also inflicted. The government has since backed down, promising to scrap its proposed fuel tax. However, it's still introducing exceptional security measures, with visitors to Paris, for example, told to stay away from certain attractions, including the Eiffel Tower. Well, in an interview, the French Prime Minister said that the government will deploy a dozen armoured vehicles to ensure peaceful protests on the streets of Paris. The last time such a measure was taken was 13 years ago.
We have information about a great number of individuals who are coming to Paris not to protest peacefully, but to confront, to attack the forces of law. We mobilized an important number of police officers, 89,000 in France overall. This is an exceptional mobilization because we don't want to endanger the Republic.
Meanwhile, weeks of protests have taken their toll on the French President, Emmanuel Macron, who has seen his approval ratings dive. With more, here's Charlotte Dubinsky.
Another day, another protest here in France as groups buoyed by the government's U-turn on a fuel tax rise feel like the winds are changing and blowing in their favour. Now, as the crisis continues, parties from the left are calling for a vote of no confidence in the French government, the second in months.
We see that our government is heading for disaster. It's our collective responsibility to make it stop here and to do something to change the government and the policies. We'll try to convince other members of parliament, aside from ours, to sign this motion of no confidence and vote it through.
Touted as France's hope when he was elected last year, he came into office with an approval rating of more than 60%. But he's gone from Jupiter to jeers, with the latest polls showing his popularity has crashed.
Labour will be freed, companies will be supported, initiative will be encouraged.
So this is the result of neoliberalism. So Macron is the neoliberalism savior, and he's implementing austerity. And I'm going to tell you about exactly what's happening in just a second. But let's watch a little bit more of this as, again, the students are rioting because so he came in promising a revolution of sorts to revolutionize French society, but the changes he's making, people, this is what the results are. And it was the gas tax was the trigger. It wasn't, that's not, so people are like, oh, we should tax gas because of climate change, global. It's not that. All right. So yes, we should do things that get people to stop using gas. But what they're doing is cutting taxes for the wealthy and then again, it's austerity. And the gas tax was just the final straw. right? And who does that hurt? That hurts people who live in rural areas, smaller towns, have to get back and forth and drive. And so you're by the way, they just had a big government push to get people to buy diesel cars. They did, right? So now 60% of the cars are diesel. Now they like, oh no, go to electric. So people don't have money to start buying new cars. So that's one problem with that. But so we're going to get into, there's a great article from the Consortium News I'm going to go over, which details exactly what's happening, because people think this is all just about a gas tax. Well, those students, they're also upset with the way he's reconfiguring how education works in France. So he's trying to really bring in some big changes, and most of them are austerity and they're all neoliberal.
I will humbly serve our people. French men and French women who feel forgotten will be better protected.
Oh, look how they're protecting them. Look how they're all being protected.
So, what's caused the collapse? As well as implementing a vast range of unpopular reforms that have led to him being labelled the president of the rich.
So did you know that he's being called the president of the rich in France? Did you know that? Did they talk about that in the United States press? Did you know that, Ruby? How about you, Arno? Did you know that?
I didn't hear that.
I haven't heard that. Here we go.
He's also known for his loose tongue and perceived arrogance. He told army generals,
Je suis votre chef.
After a dispute over spending cuts, the head of the French armed forces soon quit, and he would be far from the last to abandon Macron's camp. The president even told pensioners that France would be better off if people stopped whining after being harangued by voters worried about pension cuts.
So he's implementing this massive austerity program. This is what I'm going to go into it in a second, but that's what they're talking about. And he told pensioners, quit whining. So again, instead of coming in and doing what you're supposed to do, he's taking it out on the people with no money and no power, the people who are just getting by, and people have had it. So here we go.
The only thing we don't have the right to do is complain.
The president may have hoped the U-turn on fuel tax hikes would have quelled the anger, but it hasn't. It only seems to have intensified it, with truckers, farmers and students now taking their concerns to the streets. Protesters here are calling for Macron to resign.
I consider Macron to be a president who is against social rights, who is trying to deconstruct the welfare state.
He is clearly implementing policies for the rich. He is the president of the rich. We want a president for the poor, a president who prioritizes the common interest.
Macron's resignation would be ideal. Parliament's job is to respond to the people's demands. Unfortunately, though, in the National Assembly, where the majority are with En Marche, the deputies follow orders like sheep. But we are happy because there are deputies who represent the interests of the people, who answer to their demands.
Macron, I don't like him a lot, but the problem is that if you want Macron to resign, who are you going to put forward against him? So if you have a good candidate, that's fine, but Macron resign and let's see what happens. It's not a great option for me.
Macron once penned a book entitled Revolution.
There it is.
In it, he wrote about the quest to reinvent the French nation. His unpopular policies may just be doing that, as the Yellow Vest movement continues to gain traction. Problem is, this wasn't the revolution the president foresaw, nor wanted.
Quick questions. France, I know you have family in France. What on earth is going on in France? That's the first part.
Yes, I could not agree more with you. I think what's going on in France is one of the most profound moments in modern history. And I say that even though it's not yet clear how this story is going to end and where exactly all these street demonstrations are going. But there's already enough that has happened in the last 10 days that this has been going on, that some conclusions can be drawn. Here they are. The place to start understanding this is the crash, the capitalist global crash of 2008. What that crash did, besides causing massive unemployment and massive cutbacks in production and all of that, well, here's what happened. The people of the world, some more, some less, got a lesson, a kind of reminder, if you like, that capitalism is deeply unstable. That would have been bad enough. But then they saw something else very stark. The capitalists of the world, the big bankers, the big corporations, who were mostly responsible for the speculation and the bubble that burst in 2008, ran to the government, the kind of government they denounced as being inefficient and who needs them, and get the government off our back. Yeah, well, now that you made a mess of the world economy, you know where you're all running in your jet airplanes? You're running to Washington, and New York, and Paris, and London, and you're on your knees begging for huge bailouts in which the people's tax money is going to be used by these governments that you're controlling to bail you out of the mess you made. And the world watched as the governments, one after the other, did exactly what they were told. Gave out vast amounts of money, money in the trillions of dollars.
I was going to ask, do you think they should have done that? I just wanted to interrupt for that point, because you're making a really good point. Do you think they should have bailed him out, or do you think they should have let him go bust?
Well, you know, it's not the only either or. You could bail him out, and you could put a condition on him. Give you an example. You could have bailed out General Motors, which the United States government did. I don't know if your listeners and viewers are aware. In 2008 and 9, but mostly in 2009, the Obama government gave General Motors $50 billion. Wow. To this day that we're here, that I'm talking to you, General Motors has paid back $40 billion. So we, the taxpayers, are out $10 billion. We bailed out General Motors, but there were no conditions. In other words, we didn't say, we're going to bail you out. We're going to keep you alive as a corporation. But if what we do for you helps you recover, you've got to promise not to lay people off.
It's a fight. General Motors plans layoffs and plant closures. GM is defending its business interests. On the other side is President Trump. He's not happy with GM, especially the job cuts in Ohio, heartland America, that helped him win the Oval Office. He's threatening to cut subsidies. It's a fight that pits political interest against financial interest. Start with GM's side of the argument. The Chevy Cruze, the Chevy Impala, and the Volt, they're not selling well, so they want to close the plants that make them. Doing that will save $4.6 billion every year. GM will plow that money into more profitable truck and SUV production, which is now 75% of their sales. They gotta stay competitive, they gotta cut. President Trump sees it very differently. 10 years ago, taxpayers bailed out General Motors, saved the company. The government poured in billions. Now they're making money. That's GM. They're making money. Show some gratitude, why don't you? We'll look at ending subsidies. That's what the president's saying. Of course, the president is particularly upset that GM is cutting thousands of jobs in Ohio. Candidate Trump had pledged to support manufacturing in that state.
You've got to promise to pay big taxes. You've got to do it. We gave him nothing, no condition at all, which is why it's so ironic that 2 weeks ago, General Motors gave its workers a Christmas present. 15,000 of them were going to lose their job.
Yeah.
So we get to bail them out. They get to fire us. There's something wrong with this story. So, yeah, we can bail them out, maybe, but we have to make conditions. No conditions were put. They were given carte blanche. We bailed, and the world watched it. And no sooner were the bailouts completed than the governments who had spent a fortune bailing out these companies announced to the mass of people in their society, we now have to have austerity. You see, we borrowed a lot of money to bail out these banks and corporations. That puts the government in a big debt because we borrowed all the money, and we got to pay that debt back. So we can't provide you with supports, public services of all kinds. We're going to have to cut them back. We're going to have to lay off public employees because we have to recover from the crisis. Whoa, the richest people got the bailout and all the rest of us got austerity. And I think the mass of people in the world, they understand they've been taken for a real big ride here.
Yes.
Charlotte.
So even though they did a U-turn on the gas tax, people are still upset. What? I thought this was all about a gas. No, the gas tax was the trigger. So there's a great article from Diana Johnston, or do you say John Stone? She's in Paris, and she wrote this, and this was in the Consortium News. So the gas tax was the last straw in a long series of measures favoring the rich at the expense of the majority of the population. That is why the movement achieved almost instant popularity and support. So this isn't just about the gas tax. This is, well, what's been leading it up to? Well, briefly, what people have been saying to the government is we can't make ends meet. The cost of living keeps going up and our incomes keep going down. We can't take it anymore. The government must stop, think, and change course. So just the same thing that's happening in the United States. 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck in the richest country in the world, where Amazon, the richest man in the world, Jeff Bezos, gets $1 billion in tax bonuses, and he's worth $150 billion himself. So the rich get welfare and everyone else gets to pound sand and tread water. 30 million Americans still don't have health care. So I saw an article in the New Yorker that's saying, well, these protests in France, a lot of people are trying to say it's because they don't have enough progressive politics. Like the Bernie Sanders people are going to tell you, but that's obviously not the case because they have a universal health care and free college and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but they're trying to take that away right now. That's why people are protesting. He's trying to screw the welfare state. That's why that's right. So the thing they have, they're protesting now before it's all gone. Whereas in America, we can't even protest and we don't have it. Macron didn't run on the promise to freeze pensions. Recall the yellow vest, but that's what he's doing. But that is what he has done, along with increasing solidarity taxes on pensioners. So this is austerity. This is what happens in Greece. This is austerity happening everywhere, right? Italy, France.
And it's on the back of the working class.
Of course. A significant and recurring complaint concerned the matter of health care. So I'm jumping around this article. So they also, this is, so it's not just the gas tax here, which is what else it is. France has long had the best public health program in the world, but this is being steadily undermined to meet the primary need of capital, profit. So in order to put profit, so capitalists can make money off of your illness, they're screwing over their healthcare system right now. In the past few years, there's been a growing government campaign to encourage and finally to oblige, meaning make people subscribe to a mutuella. What that is, a private health insurance, ostensibly to fill in the gaps not covered by France's universal health coverage. So now just like here in the United States, you have to buy something from a capitalist. You have to pay money to a capitalist if you just want to live in America, or you get fined. That's the law here. So that's what they're doing there. They're making you obligatory to buy private health insurance. The gaps can be the 15% that is not covered for ordinary illnesses. Grave illnesses are covered 100% in France. Or for medicines taken off the covered list, or for dental work, among other things. So there's usually a 15% gap in the coverage that the government gives to people for their health care and what they actually have to get. And so they're making people buy private insurance to cover that. The gaps to fill expanding along with the cost of subscribing to the Mutuelle. In reality, this program, sold to the public as modernizing improvement, is a gradual move toward privatization of healthcare, another neoliberal dream. So that's happening. It is a sneaky method of opening the whole field of public health to international financial capital investment. This gambit has not fooled ordinary people and is high on the list of complaints by the Gilets jaunes. So that's the yellow vests. So this is high on their list of complaints. I haven't heard this talked about in Western media. In fact, the only time it was talked about, which was in New Yorker, they poo-pooed this idea that there was more. Rather, the benefits, so the gas tax. So people go, well, you better tax the gas because of global warming. Well, it would be one thing if they took the taxes that those people have to pay now on their gas and they used it to fund green infrastructure programs. But that's not what they're doing. Rather, these taxes, the benefits are earmarked to balance the budget. What? That is to serve the government debt. The Macronian gas tax is just another austerity measure, along with cutting back public services and selling the family jewels. That is selling potential moneymakers like Alstom port facilities and Paris airports. So they're doing that neoliberalism crap where they're privatizing and selling off their public spaces. They already did. I think they sold Alstom to General Electric. So and people are revolting finally in France over it. They're privatizing public spaces, public utilities, instituting austerity, trying to privatize healthcare. And then they're not even, the money from the gas tax, they're not even using it to invest in green infrastructure. They're using it to pay down their debt. Why? Because Macron is a tool of the bankers. And that's what the bankers want. That's what the bankers want in Greece. They're getting it. They've wiped out a third of the Greece's GDP already with this austerity. That's why real estate, so you can get it for a song in Greece these days.
Jimmy Pilsnell says all of Europe is being destabilized by neoliberals and the far right. They want to privatize all social services.
Yes. So this is happening worldwide. So there's going to need to be a worldwide movement of people, workers, together to overthrow this crap. Well, Amazon already was on strike in the UK and in Spain, the Amazon workers. So this can happen. It must. This is why cutting expenses and balancing the budget is Macron's obsession, because that's what he was chosen to do by the oligarchy that sponsored his candidacy. Remember who propped him up was Barack Obama. He didn't prop up the far left candidate. He propped up Macron, the tool of the bankers, the oligarchs.